In today's lecture, we are going to study external financing needed, internal growth, and sustainable growth. These ideas are very practical. They help us answer a question that every growing business eventually faces. Can the firm afford the growth it is planning? Growth sounds exciting. More sales, more customers, more market share, and more opportunity. But in finance, we always ask one more question. What resources are required to support that growth? A firm that sells more may need more inventory, more receivables, more equipment, more employees, more cash, and more operating capacity. That is why growth is not always free, even when the firm is profitable. The key idea in this lecture is simple. Growth creates financing needs. Sometimes those needs can be covered internally. Sometimes they can be covered through normal operating liabilities. And sometimes the firm must raise additional financing from outside sources. This is where external financing needed, or EFN, becomes useful. EFN does not tell us whether growth is good or bad. It tells us whether the growth plan can be financed under the firm's current assumptions. By the end of this lecture, you should understand how EFN works, why profitable firms may still need financing, how retained earnings support growth, and how internal growth and sustainable growth help managers evaluate growth plans. Let's begin with the basic logic behind external financing needed. A sales forecast usually starts with expected growth in sales. But once sales increase, the business usually needs more assets to support those sales. Think about the operating side of the firm. More sales may require more cash balances, more accounts receivable, more inventory, and possibly more fixed assets. These are the resources that allow the firm to produce, sell, deliver, and collect. So the first question is, how much must assets increase to support the planned growth? The second question is, how much financing will arise naturally from operations? Some liabilities increase as the business expands. Accounts payable may rise because the firm buys more from suppliers. Accrued expenses may rise because the firm has more wages, taxes, or other operating obligations. These are called spontaneous liabilities because they tend to grow with operations. They provide partial financing without requiring a separate financing decision. The third question is, how much profit will be retained in the business? If the firm earns profit and keeps part of that profit instead of distributing it, retained earnings increase. That increase in equity helps finance growth internally. So EFN is built around three forces: asset needs, spontaneous financing, and retained earnings. When asset needs exceed the financing provided by spontaneous liabilities and retained earnings, the firm has a financing gap. That gap is the amount of external financing needed. The important point is this: EFN is not just a calculation, it is a planning tool. It forces managers to connect growth strategy with financing reality. Now let's think about EFN from the balance sheet perspective. A projected balance sheet must balance. Assets must be supported by liabilities and equity. When managers prepare pro forma financial statements, they forecast what the firm's balance sheet will look like after the planned growth. They estimate the assets needed, the liabilities that will arise naturally, and the equity that will increase through retained earnings. After that, the balance sheet may still not balance. If projected assets are greater than the projected liabilities and equity already identified, the difference is the financing plug. That plug represents external financing needed. This is a very important idea. EFN is not an operating account. It is not a magic number. It is the financing required to make the forecasted balance sheet work. But managers must be careful. They should not simply label the plug as debt without asking whether the firm can actually borrow that amount. They should not simply label the plug as equity without considering dilution, investor demand, issuance costs, and market conditions. A good financial plan does two things. First, it estimates the financing need. Second, it asks whether the proposed financing source is realistic, affordable, and consistent with the firm's strategy. The percent of sales approach is often used as a first-pass forecasting method. It is useful because many operating accounts move with sales, but the assumptions matter. Not all assets grow smoothly with sales. Not all liabilities increase automatically. Profit margins may change as the firm grows. So EFN is helpful, but it is only as good as the assumptions behind it. Let's now focus on retained earnings as an internal financing source. When a firm earns net income, it has a choice. It can distribute some of that income to owners, or it can retain some of it inside the business. The portion distributed is connected to payout policy. The portion kept inside the firm is connected to retention policy. Retained earnings are important because they increase equity. And when equity increases, the firm has more internal capacity to finance asset growth. This is why profitability alone is not enough. We must also ask how much of the profit is retained. A profitable firm that distributes most of its earnings may have limited internal financing capacity. A profitable firm that retains more of its earnings may be able to finance more growth internally. This creates an important managerial trade-off. Shareholders may like dividends or repurchases because those payments return cash to owners. But when the firm pays out more, it retains less. And when it retains less, it may need more external financing to support growth. So payout policy affects growth capacity. Higher profitability increases internal financing capacity. Higher retention increases internal financing capacity. Higher payout reduces internal financing capacity. This does not mean dividends are bad. It means dividend policy and growth policy must be consistent. If a firm wants to grow rapidly while also paying out a large share of earnings, it may need outside financing. The key lesson is simple. Retained earnings are the bridge between profitability and internally financed growth. A common question is, why would a profitable firm need external financing? At first, it may seem strange. If the firm is profitable, shouldn't it have enough money to grow? Not necessarily. The reason is timing and balance sheet investment. Profit is recorded through accounting, but growth often requires cash before cash is collected. For example, receivables may grow before customers pay. The firm may record sales, but the cash may arrive later. Inventory may need to be purchased before products are sold. That means cash is committed before revenue is fully collected. Capacity may also require upfront investment. Equipment, facilities, technology, logistics, and employees may be needed before the firm receives the full benefit of higher sales. So, a firm can be profitable and still face a financing need. This is why financial managers separate profitability from funding capacity. Profitability asks, are sales generating earnings? Funding capacity asks, does the firm have enough financing to support the assets and working capital required by the business model? Asset intensity is a major part of this discussion. Some firms require large asset investments for each level of sales. Manufacturing, transportation, utilities, and inventory-heavy businesses often fall into this category. Other firms can grow with fewer assets. Some service firms, consulting firms, platform businesses, or scalable software firms may require less asset investment for additional sales. So the real question is not only whether sales are growing. The real question is how many assets must be committed to support that growth. Let's now move to the internal growth rate. The internal growth rate asks a very conservative question. How fast can the firm grow using only internally generated funds? In this setting, the firm does not borrow more. It does not issue new equity. Growth is financed only by retained earnings. Internal growth depends mainly on two things: return on assets and the retention ratio. Return on assets measures how much net income the firm generates from its asset base. If the firm uses assets efficiently and earns strong profits, it can generate more internal financing. The retention ratio tells us how much of that profit stays inside the firm. If the firm retains more earnings, it has more internal funds available for growth. So internal growth is higher when the firm earns more profit per dollar of assets and keeps more of those earnings. It is lower when profitability is weak, asset needs are high, or payout is high. Internal growth is useful because it gives managers a baseline. It shows the growth rate that can be supported without changing financing policy. But it is also restrictive. Many firms do use debt. Many firms issue equity. Many firms adjust payout policy or improve operations. So the internal growth rate is not a prediction of what must happen. It is a benchmark. It tells managers, under a no external financing assumption, this is the growth capacity of the firm. If planned growth is above that benchmark, managers must explain how the extra growth will be financed. Next, let's discuss the sustainable growth rate. The sustainable growth rate asks a different question from the internal growth rate. It asks, how fast can the firm grow without issuing new equity while maintaining its target capital structure? This is less restrictive than internal growth because the firm may use additional debt as long as debt grows in a way that preserves the firm's leverage policy. The formula is shown in the background, so let's focus on the intuition. Sustainable growth depends on return on equity and the retention ratio. Return on equity measures how much profit the firm generates for each dollar of equity. The retention ratio tells us how much of that profit remains inside the firm. When retained earnings increase equity, the firm can support more assets. If the firm maintains its target leverage, it may also add debt in proportion to the increase in equity. That is why sustainable growth is usually higher than internal growth. Internal growth assumes no additional borrowing. Sustainable growth allows debt to grow with equity while avoiding new equity issuance. But we must be careful. Sustainable growth is not a permanent speed limit. It is a diagnostic tool. A firm can grow faster than its sustainable growth rate, but something must change. It may issue new equity. It may increase leverage. It may improve margins. It may improve asset efficiency. It may reduce payout. Or it may revise the growth target. The sustainable growth rate helps managers see whether the growth plan is consistent with current profitability, retention, and leverage policy. Now let's compare internal growth and sustainable growth. Both concepts describe growth capacity, but they answer different managerial questions. Internal growth asks, how fast can the firm grow if it does not use any external financing? Sustainable growth asks, how fast can the firm grow without issuing new equity while maintaining its target capital structure? So internal growth is the more conservative measure. Sustainable growth allows the firm to use debt in a controlled way as long as leverage remains consistent with policy. This comparison is especially useful when evaluating a growth plan. If planned growth is below internal growth, the firm may be able to finance growth entirely with retained earnings. If planned growth is above internal growth but below sustainable growth, the firm may need debt, but not necessarily new equity. If planned growth is above sustainable growth, the firm must change something more significant. It may need new equity, more leverage, higher profitability, better asset efficiency, more retention, or a slower growth plan. This brings us to the drivers of growth capacity. The DuPont identity helps us understand return on equity. Sustainable growth can improve when the firm increases profit margins, uses assets more efficiently, uses leverage appropriately, or retains more earnings. But every lever has trade-offs. Higher margins may require pricing power or cost discipline. Higher asset turnover may require tighter working capital management. Higher leverage may increase financial risk. Higher retention may reduce cash returned to shareholders. Finance is not about finding a free lunch. It is about understanding trade-offs clearly. When a growth plan creates a financing gap, managers have several possible responses. One option is to improve profit margins. If the firm earns more profit from each dollar of sales, it can generate more internal financing. but this may require higher prices, lower costs, better product mix, stronger operations, or more discipline. Another option is to improve asset turnover. If the firm can support sales with fewer assets, it reduces the amount of financing required. This may involve faster collection of receivables, better inventory management, outsourcing, or higher utilization of existing assets. A third option is to increase retention. If the firm pays out less, more earnings remain inside the business. But investors may dislike lower dividends or fewer repurchases. A fourth option is to use more debt. Debt can finance growth without issuing equity, but more debt increases fixed obligations, default risk, covenant pressure, and earnings volatility. A fifth option is to issue equity. Equity can fund growth without increasing the debt burden, but it may dilute existing owners, and issuance can be expensive or poorly timed. A sixth option is to slow growth. Lower growth reduces the assets required and lowers the financing need, but the firm may sacrifice market share, strategic timing, or competitive momentum. The best plans often combine several responses. A firm may improve working capital, retain more earnings, and add a manageable amount of financing instead of relying on one extreme solution. Let's finish with the common pitfalls in growth planning. The first mistake is assuming that all assets grow smoothly with sales. In reality, some assets grow in large steps. A firm may have excess capacity for a while, and then suddenly need a major investment. The second mistake is ignoring working capital timing. Sales may increase before receivables are collected. Inventory may need to be purchased before revenue becomes cash. Profit can appear before cash arrives. The third mistake is assuming that profit margins stay constant. Rapid growth may require discounts, overtime, hiring, training, logistics spending, or customer acquisition costs. These pressures can reduce margins. The fourth mistake is confusing profit with cash. Net income contributes to retained earnings, but cash may be tied up in receivables, inventory, capital expenditures, or debt service. The fifth mistake is assuming spontaneous liabilities are unlimited. Supplier credit can become costly or unavailable if the firm stretches payables too far. The sixth mistake is forgetting financing feedback. New debt can create interest expense, and that can reduce net income and retained earnings. Finally, do not interpret sustainable growth as a guarantee. A firm may be able to finance growth mathematically, but strategy, competition, execution risk, and capital market conditions still matter. So here is the main takeaway. EFN, internal growth, and sustainable growth help managers reveal the financial consequences of growth before the firm commits resources. Growth is exciting, but financially disciplined growth is stronger. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.